Hey guys, it's Chris. From a rare brain infection to a monstrous attack by a swarm of otters, here are 10 times swimming went very, very, very wrong. Number 10. Brain infection. As it turns out, swimming in Florida is not always the best idea. A young innocent boy, only 13 years old, recently died after contracting a rare brain-eating amoeba after swimming in a Florida lake. The teen got the terrifying infection during a family vacation. The family was staying at a campground connected to a water park and lake. Everyone went swimming in the lake. It seemed perfectly fine. But just a few days later, the young boy named Tanner Wall began developing some very strange symptoms. These symptoms included nausea, vomiting, and headaches. His parents originally thought that he had strep throat, but when he began getting very sick, they took him to the hospital, where he was placed on a ventilator, and the doctors discovered a rare brain infection. According to Live Science, the kid contracted a parasitic amoeba of which there is no cure. This thing is a single-celled organism found in freshwater lakes and rivers. It's actually not even that uncommon, and is something that can be contracted in the southern states during the summer months. It probably happened because the boy swallowed water contaminated with the parasites, which then entered his brain and began to eat away at his brain tissue. Unfortunately, it did prove fatal, and the young boy died. Number 9. Snakes in the waterfall. A Brazilian doctor was swimming at the bottom of a waterfall when she made a rather terrifying discovery. Dini Salgo was just standing beneath the falls at a popular Brazilian tourist destination when, from out of nowhere, a venomous snake fell down the waterfall and landed right on top of her. It was a freak accident, and a 1 in a million chance. And yes, it totally ruined her swimming adventure. She screamed in pain, then desperately swam away from the waterfall as the venom from the snake pulsed through her veins. It managed to bite her twice on the arm, despite its awkward journey down the falls. The snake was identified as the highly dangerous both ropes jararaca. This thing has such potent venom that it can very easily kill a person in just a handful of minutes. The venom causes swelling at the site of the bite, followed by necrosis, blistering, and then some very uncomfortable bleeding from the skin, gums, and even nose. Often these symptoms can lead to death by shock and renal failure. It's lucky for Dini that she made it to the hospital so quickly, as she was given an antidote to the snake venom and put in emergency surgery. By the time she reached the hospital, 70% of her airways had already been compromised. But thankfully, Newsweek reported that she was put in the ICU in stable condition and was expected to make a full recovery. We kinda wonder why this snake decided to take a dive off the waterfall in the first place. Maybe the serpent was just feeling a little adventurous that day. Number 8. IRONMAN gone wrong. The Ironman 70.3 Calgary Triathlon is an extremely dramatic race to see who's the best. The triathlon involves swimming, cycling, and running. But this Canadian sporting event turned into a tragedy when a competitor from Ontario drowned during the swimming portion of the race. He was 47 years old when he entered the competition. At around 8 o'clock in the morning, the local police were alerted that a man had drowned. It turned out he wasn't quite ready to be the ultimate Canadian Ironman. But how does a person participating in a triathlon drown? The swimming course was about 1.2 miles. Sometime during that swim, the unidentified victim was seen struggling and in great distress. It seemed that he had suffered some kind of heart failure while he was in the water. Volunteers quickly rushed into the water to pull him out, but by the time the emergency services personnel were ready to take him to the hospital, he had sadly already died. One of the eyewitnesses, whose husband was also participating in the race, said that sometimes these things just happen. Since the athletes push their bodies so hard, it's sad, but sometimes their bodies just stop. Do you know anyone who has completed a triathlon or marathon like this? What happened to them? Let us know in the comments down below. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 7. Tragedy in China. An unbelievable tragedy was recently caught on video in China. It happened at a children's swimming pool in Jiyang City. A 4-year-old girl was in the swimming pool, while the 2 adults that were supposed to be watching her were standing with their backs to the pool, seemingly munching on some noodles out of a styrofoam box. The child was swimming okay for a little while, but then she flipped over with her head under the water so the adults couldn't hear her screaming. She then flailed, and the adults just kept eating their noodles, and by the time they turned around, the child was already dead. But the incident gets even worse One of the women even placed another child in the small swimming pool and didn't even realize that there was a dead baby floating just a few inches away. It looks as if the child that was just put in the pool notices that something is amiss, but fails to raise any attention to the adults. It was later confirmed that the child left upside down had died. They seriously didn't figure out the girl was deceased for a shocking amount of time. The local police confirmed after that the child did indeed die in the swimming pool, though the women who were supposed to be watching the girl and were instead eating noodles have not been identified, nor has it been revealed whether they will be facing criminal charges. Number 6. Shark attack. In 2019, Paige Winter was just 17 years old when she got a new boyfriend. She had tickets to the Ariana Grande concert, and life couldn't have been any sweeter for the teenager. But then, she went to the beach with her family in North Carolina. She went swimming in the mid-afternoon. Being eaten by a shark was the last thing on her mind, and yet that's exactly what happened. Paige was innocently swimming in the shallow water at the time of the attack. She was with her sister, joking around and pretending to be a mermaid. But in the middle of her mermaid impersonation, she felt something grab her foot. She thought it was her dad playing a prank, but then whatever had a hold of her foot began to pull painfully hard. It was at that moment she knew something was wrong. Paige realized pretty quickly that she was being attacked by a shark. But instead of poking the shark in the eyes like she should have, she reached out her hand into its mouth and felt her skin rip apart. Thankfully, her dad came to the rescue and punched the shark in the face. He then carried her all the way back to the beach, where she had one less leg than when she went into the water. Paige recalls having the Ariana Grande song Breathing in her head as she laid in the sand. She said she knew she needed to keep breathing. She remembers being put on a boogie board and carried into the back of a pickup truck to a waiting helicopter. It took about 35 minutes in total. She remembers one of the doctors telling her that they were going to have to take her leg. She asked if she could have a really cool prosthetic, and the doctor said yes, so Paige told her, "Let's do it." That's a pretty good attitude to have right after your leg was just ripped off by a shark. She has now made a full recovery, minus the leg. But she sounds cool! Number 5. Forced to swim. A woman has been sentenced to 4 years in jail after killing her husband by forcing him to exercise. The charge was reckless homicide. The crime was that the woman, her real name Chris Mason, was 41 years old and forced her 73-year-old husband James, who by the way had heart problems, to do laps around a pool. She didn't really mean to kill him, but she decided that he needed more exercise and that he should be swimming in their pool more often. After making him swim way beyond what he was capable of, he collapsed in her arms inside the indoor pool at the apartment complex where they were residing. She quickly brought him to the hospital, but he died the next day from complications. She literally made him swim himself to death. Do you think it's lawful that Chris Mason spends 4 years in prison? I mean, she was trying to save his life by making him exercise, not kill him. What do you think? Let us know in the comments down below. Number 4. Break in and swim. A woman in Florida was recently arrested after she broke into somebody's yard, got naked, and then swam around in his pool. According to the arrest report, it happened in Charlotte County, with the homeowner describing coming home from his doctor's appointment and seeing a pile of clothes beside the pool. He then realized there was a naked woman splashing around in the water. She was later identified as Heather Kennedy, who for some bizarre reason remained inside the pool even after the guy got home. By the time the officers arrived, she was still swimming. The audacity of this woman is legendary. She refused to get out of the pool and tried to resist the police officers, who were left with no choice but to handcuff the woman and bring her to jail. She was ultimately charged with trespassing and resisting an officer, and she never did give her motive behind the break-in. But who knows? Maybe she just needed to cool down. Jail is a little harsh for something like this, don't you think? Number 3. Swimming with CROCS. A teenager from California is lucky to be alive after she was attacked by a vicious crocodile while on vacation in Mexico. She was staying at a Mexican resort at the Marriott in Puerto Vallarta when she and her friend went down to the beach for a midnight dip. It was shortly after they got into the water that a massive crocodile, about 12 feet long, came out of the darkness and clamped its super sharp teeth right onto her right leg, and then dragged her screaming underneath the water. Luckily, her friend and 4 nearby locals helped to fight the giant reptile off. A hotel employee even showed up with a chunk of wood and began beating the crocodile until it let her go. The teenage girl was brought to safety, though she was in pretty rough shape. Her leg was torn up but not completely chewed off. She suffered muscle and tendon damage but will keep her leg and even her toes. She didn't even suffer any broken bones. However, if it hadn't been for the people who came to her rescue, she most likely would have been eaten. Number 2. Shot in the pool. In Atlanta, a brawl at a public pool led to a 17-year-old boy being shot and killed. The last thing anyone expects to happen to them at the public pool is to be shot to death. Swimming in stagnant pee left behind by dozens of people, absolutely. Shot in the face? Not so much. According to the Atlanta police, the victim was involved in an argument that escalated into a gunfight while everyone else was trying to swim in the pool. The shooter gunned the kid down in full view of everyone. I mean, who brings a gun to a public pool anyway? Amazingly, the city actually shut down all 12 of their outdoor public pools after the incident, saying the pools needed operational assessment. In other words, it's actually just too dangerous in Atlanta to be swimming in public. Number 1. A swarm of otters. A woman put on her wetsuit, her gloves, and her booties, and she entered the water at the Big Lagoon County Park at just about 8 o'clock in the morning. It was a little earlier than her usual swim time. She managed to get about 80 yards away from the boat ramp when she noticed that she wasn't alone. There was a group of otters swimming with her, which seemed kind of cute, until they swarmed her and began trying to rip her limbs off. According to what the woman told local news, she was just minding her own business when all of a sudden one of the otters grabbed hold of her. Then came more, and then more. She screamed, but they didn't let go. The otters began to bite and bite, as if they wanted to eat her for breakfast. Last time we checked, otters don't typically eat humans. An eyewitness saw at least 4 otters trying to kill this woman, and luckily several spectators ran into the water to scare off these vicious animals. And this poor woman swam back to shore covered in bite marks. She'd been bitten about 30 times and needed to undergo a series of rabies shots, as well as intravenous antibiotics. It turns out there is an otter den somewhere in the area, and if you swim in the lagoon too early in the morning, well yeah, they'll come and attack you. All we can say is, damn. Thanks for watching. What's the worst thing that's ever happened to you while swimming? Let us know in the comments and be sure to hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed this video so you can see more awesome content. We'll see you next time.